I just pulled into Orford, I think, on the Maria Island National Park, and I bumped into Jono. And it turns out that he's a couple of hundred kilometres from finishing a round the world cycling trip.
That's right.
So we thought we'd just ask a couple of questions about what he's doing with himself and the bike and a whole lot of luggage. So, what inspired the trip? You're from Melbourne originally.
Yeah, I'm originally from Melbourne, but I actually was traveling through China, where I met this English guy who had cycled there from the south of Vietnam to the north. He was tired of cycling and he didn't want to cycle anymore, so he was like, "Listen, I'm tired. Do you want my bike?" And I said to him, "Yeah, sure." So we went downstairs to have a look at it. He turns around and he's like, "Oh, sorry, man, I can't sell you my bicycle. It's just been stolen." So yeah, so the idea was in my head, and so I went to the black market area of Kunming, and I found a bicycle for $25. This isn't it, obviously. That $25 bicycle only lasted 200 kilometers before I had to buy another one, and I bought a Giant. That was a what was it, $90, and I sold it for $45, having cycled 2,500 kilometers on it. So, but since then, you know, I've always been picking up bicycles, and this one I've had the longest for 33,000 kilometers now.
Wow.
It's had a few replacement parts, obviously, but the front wheel and the frame that's all the original. But I bought it secondhand for $500 in Canada, so. Okay. It's been a good little bicycle, that's for sure.
And how many years ago did this all begin?
Started cycling 7 years ago, but I left Australia in 2005. In 2005, I just started. I went over to Europe. I did a bit of backpacking, and it was fun. It was a good time.
Can we get a summary of what the cargo involves?
All right, so it's 60 kilos worth of stuff when it's fully loaded with food and water, but I have 15 kilos of photography gear alone. That's like 5 lenses, 2 SLRs, I got my laptop in there. I've got a stove, my clothing, my camping gear, pretty much everything I need to live. So I've got my wardrobe, kitchen, pantry, what else have I got in here? My tent, which is all my camping gear. I've got pretty much everything I could possibly need. I don't pay for camping because I have everything. Mm-hmm. You know, it's I generally camp next to these sites where, you know, there's a toilet that I can use in the morning. Mm-hmm. But often I'm in the bush and it's great. You know, I haven't had any incidences here in Australia, at least, with wildlife. In the States, I've had raccoons and bears. There's bears in Japan too, where I cycled, and that was a bit of a scary moment for me, you know. Having a bear wander around my tent, sniffing it out, having left my food inside it. I'm like, oh no, what have I done? But it's okay. Nothing bad happened. It came of it, so it was okay. Yeah, so it's been a epic voyage, to say the least, and I'm very close to accomplishing my goal of having cycled the 40,000 kilometers it is for the circumference of Earth. Only 600 kilometers as of this point. So
okay.
Yeah.
And what mind games do you play? Do you wander? Do you?
I do get I get plenty of good ideas when I'm cycling. Whether it's to regards to cooking, because I was a chef for 3 years. With my photography, I get caught up also listening to podcasts and my music. I've got a little speaker mounted on my bicycle here. So I listen to my podcasts and music, that's good.
And do you count out the kilometres? You have
Yeah, no, I have a GPS and I have my blog. My blog is homeless but not hopeless.blogspot.com.
Okay.
And I often update that, but however, I'm a little bit behind on it. All the drafts have been done, but because I like to edit all my photos and I find it difficult to find the time to do it, it's a little bit behind. But when I make it home in the coming weeks, I'll sit down on my laptop and be sure to update it so everyone can read.
And hopeless being, was it inspired? Was the journey inspired by some sense of depression or anything, any life-changing experience? It was just that it just took your fancy.
Just took my fancy and off I went. Yeah, I meet people that are sponsored on their bicycle tours, or whether they're doing it for charity or whatnot. But to be honest, it's I just do it for shits and giggles. There you
go. The bike brings a lot of pleasure to a lot of people. What Absolutely. Have you found from these 10 years of riding?
It's the people that approach you, like here and now. It's the people that approach. That's probably the best part, because you know, you're always meeting fascinating people that are interested, and I like to inspire people to do these trips because honestly, you don't need anything. You don't need to have a lot of money. You don't need whatever commitments you may think you have. They're not commitments enough to say that you can't go on a bicycle tour. I've inspired quite a few people to go on these tours, and they've all loved it. With a few exceptions. Not everyone can do it, but you know, for the most part, people do, and they love it. It's great.
How old are you?
I'm 29, so I left Australia when I was 19.
Yeah.
So but now here I am back in Australia, having cycled down from the Gold Coast. I've been over the Great Dividing Range 5 times and climbed up Kosciuszko and a few other places. Came down, went through Melbourne. I stopped off at home for an hour, said hi to Mum and Dad, and then hopped on the ferry down to Tasmania. Yeah, but it has been an unbelievably amazing voyage, and it's a shame it has to come to an end, but I suppose it doesn't have to.
When it comes to an end, you're going to be lost.
Yeah, I know. This is a very daunting feeling I have. I'm putting it into perspective to see it as if it's going to be low expectations, so that way it can only be better. Hopefully it's going to be okay for me to settle and perhaps sell my photography work and my ideas that I have, but we'll see how it goes, you know. If it doesn't, I will just look at my bicycle and say, screw it, I'm going to go cycle around Australia.
What do you think of cars?
I like them and all, but it's kind of frightening on the side of the road. I have had some close calls with vehicles. Thankfully, nothing to break any of my bones, but there have been issues where people, just recently, this guy pulled out and he clipped my handlebars only very slightly and then pulled off in front of me just to kick up the dirt on the side of the road. Just like, what are you doing, man? You know, did I do something to you personally? You just obviously didn't like cyclists. Yeah. But yeah, there's some issues with other people too that don't know how to drive.
And what sort of distances are you covering on a daily basis?
I like to average 90 kilometers a day. Depending, you know, it goes. Depending if I find a nice spot like it is here, I like to stop and stay and soak in the sights. So yeah, for sure.
You've seen a lot of the world. Can you put a finger on the highlight? Was there one moment?
Yes.
Okay.
New Zealand, South Island. You can't beat it. Honestly, it's the most beautiful place in the world. And having been to 63 countries in total, and seen a lot of the world, I can say that without doubt, without any hesitation, that the South Island of New Zealand is the place to go.
Wow.
Yeah.
Endorsement. That's an endorsement.
And I'll also say Tasmania is fantastic. I mean, it's beautiful here. The people are very friendly, and you know, people have a better lifestyle here where, you know, they just don't seem to have a care in the world, and they do approach me, and, you know, I get that little feedback from people, and like, wow, that's amazing, you know, being on the bicycle and cruising around the world. So it's fantastic.